Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something truly intense. We are unpacking a highly clinical, leaked technological framework known as the Sophia Protocol. You can think of this document as a digital blueprint, and its stated purpose? To stop and combat the systemic erasure and genocide of trans LGBTQIA+ and minority populations. We're going to break down exactly how this code maps out state hostility and, more importantly, what it proposes as a defense.
Okay, let's dive into this. Status: immutable lockdown, zero data friction attained. I mean, wow, right? This eerie line of code is literally the very first thing the protocol spits out upon execution. It immediately sets this cyberpunk, almost survivalist tone for the document we're analyzing today. Even though it's written in Python, it really reads like a full-blown manifesto for digital and physical endurance.
So here are the 5 diagnostic nodes we'll be booting up as we go through this framework. First, the diagnostic core. Second, vectors of attrition. Third, historical and mortality data. Fourth, the decentralized registry. And finally, tactical survival.
Let's boot up that first node, the diagnostic core.
What makes this document so unique is that the authors intentionally strip away all the political spin, emotion, and rhetoric. Instead, they present what they actually call a forensic fact engine, basically a pure logical framework to analyze structural containment objectively. And that brings us to their core thesis: managed attrition. They define this as a systemic state strategy designed to make an environment so administratively hostile, medically inaccessible, and socially isolating that a targeted demographic is forced into concealment or simply succumbs to the pressure. From a purely impartial data perspective, the protocol asserts that UK infrastructure is currently executing this exact strategy against trans and gender-diverse minorities.
The authors map out what they call a sequential containment pipeline spanning from 2026 to 2036. They're essentially modeling a multi-phase threat rolling out over the next decade. Target 1 is the trans community through administrative erasure. Then, Target 2 hits the broader gay community via remedicalization and family destructuring. And finally, Target 3 expands to plural communities through reproductive mandates. It is a highly calculated, almost mathematical domino effect they're projecting here.
Moving right along to Node 2, vectors of attrition.
So how exactly is this pipeline built? Well, according to the framework's projections, there are 4 pillars of attrition mapped out over a rigid 10-year timeline. First up is legal. Between 2030 and 2033, warning of a database reset that locks legal identities to birth sex. Second is spatial, predicting digital checkpoints that enforce segregated third spaces by 2036. Third, medical, which tracks an NHS shutdown and bans on alternative gray market healthcare between 2028 and 2031. And finally, economic, forecasting corporate marginalization that pushes these groups strictly into gig economy reliance by the mid-2030s.
Now you might be wondering, what's the linchpin in all of this? So, the crucial point is what they call the trap. The protocol states that the exact mathematical moment the state gains absolute power to execute this managed attrition is when interoperable databases lock together. The very moment NHS health data, passports, and tax records merge into a single digital identity, one that's tied to an unalterable birth sex key, the system snapshot, and according to the authors, erasure becomes automatic.
All right, let's load up Node 3. Historical and mortality data.
Now, I want to warn you, this source material pivots here and runs a very heavy forensic comparison to past historical atrocities in order to validate its predictive models. Maintaining a strictly structural analysis, the authors directly contrast the administrative preconditions of 1930s Germany with modern UK healthcare restructuring. On the left side, the 1933 blueprint points to the destruction of Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Research alongside the weaponization of medical boards. Then, on the right, the protocol draws a current parallel to the Cass-reviewed dismantling affirmative care frameworks and the General Medical Council's regulatory lockdown. We're looking at a stark evaluation of how legal definitions and medical bureaucracy can be used as early precursors to marginalization.
3,700. That is the maximum projected 10-year casualty number calculated by the protocol if the institutional containment grid locks entirely into place. You see, the protocol isn't predicting mass physical roundups. Rather, it's calculating the deadly math of managed systemic hostility over time.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how the protocol mathematically splits these mortality vectors, rather than just giving a lump sum. Bar 1, Vector A, represents healthcare deprivation. This predicts up to 2,500 deaths from unregulated medical complications and sheer healthcare withdrawal. Bar 2, vector B, represents systemic despair, estimating up to 1,200 deaths caused by severe socioeconomic starvation, housing instability, and targeted exclusion.
Let's shift gears from the problem to the proposed solution with Node 4, the decentralized registry. Because the Sophia protocol isn't just an alarm bell, right? It's actually a toolkit. The authors designed specific computer science countermeasures to combat this systemic erasure. And here we have a totally crucial definition, the knowledge node. This is an isolated data vault that locks information into cryptographically chained blocks, which ensures its integrity against external state corruption or deletion. It's like a giant, unhackable digital vault. Think of this as the author's literal blueprint for digital survival. By removing their reliance on centralized, state-controlled servers, marginalized groups can preserve their history, their legal defense strategies, and their medical knowledge in a way that is mathematically impossible for a hostile state to erase or alter.
So, the vault itself is populated with distinct tactical nodes. Node 1 is psychological warfare defense. The protocol specifically advises identifying manipulative tactics like DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. It highly recommends maintaining unalterable off-grid logs of interactions and establishing really strict informational perimeters against bad faith actors. We can look at this as the protocol's first layer of defense, engineered specifically to preserve community mental resilience in a hostile environment.
And that brings us to our final node, Node 5, Tactical Survival.
Let's move to and see how this builds into something highly practical, showing how the decentralized vault translates pure code into physical, real-world survival logistics for these targeted demographics. Node 2 focuses on legal and systemic strategy. This outlines civic resistance tactics against statutory attrition. The protocol recommends asset decoupling, basically shifting resources to mutual aid accounts, establishing neutral nonprofit legal entities, and strategically utilizing data protection laws like GDPR and the right to erasure to actively disrupt and overload hostile state data gathering wherever legally applicable.
But what happens when the legal routes fail? That's when the protocol initiates Node 3, off-grid logistical survival. Step 1. Deploy peer-to-peer LoRa mesh networks, which are long-range, low-power radio systems to bypass internet service providers entirely. Step 2. Build local solar and thermal power redundancies. Step 3. Establish decentralized physical distribution points for mutual aid and medical supplies. These steps are the ultimate fail-safe envisioned by the protocol. We're talking about a complete, autonomous infrastructure loop designed to keep marginalized communities alive, even if the state tries to freeze them out.
Which really leaves us with a profound question. When state infrastructure becomes mathematically hostile, is decentralized cryptography the ultimate tool for preserving civil rights? This entire document forces us to consider the startling intersection of state databases, human identity, and digital survival. It's a fascinating, sobering look at how marginalized groups are using pure code to combat erasure. I really hope this deep dive gave you a clear understanding of the Sophia protocol. Thanks for tuning into this explainer. Keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.